Do you want to know exactly what to pay your virtual assistant from the Philippines? Like where you can attract great talent for a fraction of hiring from the US? I'm sure your local guru told you that $2 an hour is perfect. To me, that's the fastest way to waste months on the hiring hamster wheel. Over the past couple years, I've built my own team from the Philippines to run my Amazon business. And from the hundreds of interviews I've taken to help our clients build their teams, I've had the salary talk plenty of times. Today, I'm going to walk you through my exact salary framework. It's the same system I've used to build my team and what I use with our clients to build theirs. Let's jump right in. All right, so who is this guy? This guy right here. What's up? I'm Zach. I have an Amazon business that does $1 million a year in revenue and has for the past couple years. In 2021, I made my first hire from the Philippines, and now I have a team of 3 full-time, all based in the Philippines, that basically run my Amazon business. Because of the great experience I had with hiring from the Philippines, I started bringing that to other Amazon sellers and entrepreneurs from the US. So that's basically where I spend the bulk of my time now, is helping other people hire great talent from the Philippines, especially past the normal idea of what a virtual assistant is, and that's kind of what we're going to touch on here today. So first of all, I want to talk about, why does this even work? Why is hiring from the Philippines something that is available to us? Now, the obvious answer is the currency exchange. So obviously the US dollar is a very strong currency, and when compared to something like the Philippine peso, the purchasing power goes a long way in the Philippines. And to give you an idea of what the conditions are like locally in the job market for a BPO job, which is just business process outsourcing, basically like customer support agents you would interact with, they get paid around $350 a month. And that's with a 1 to 2 hour commute each way. So that's kind of what you're up against in terms of the local job market when hiring from the Philippines. Now, there's plenty of countries where the currency is not strong and that they have cheap purchasing power. So why is it the Philippines specifically that we focus on? Well, the first reason is for the English proficiency. Basically, the schools in the Philippines are taught in English. So it makes English a very common language to be spoken. I was just there this summer, and it was obvious that they were much better at English than the other countries in Asia. Also, the Philippines specifically, because remote work is a lot more normalized there. So it's like in family friend circles to work remotely, especially for companies in the US. So I'm sure if you've heard of hiring from the Philippines or heard of virtual assistants in general, you've heard of the $2 an hour. You know, that's all you need to pay is $2 an hour. That's all they cost. And in my experience, that's not the kind of talent I want to work with. At the end of the day, these are humans too. And so when I'm hiring from the Philippines, I'm looking for people that are actually going to be filling responsibilities and roles in my company, not just low-level data entry jobs. So $2 an hour is not the range I hire from. And it's definitely not what I recommend for my clients. Of course, there are tasks that are repetitive, and that's why we're delegating them in the first place. But I think that, again, one person is not going to be like the other, so I'm willing to pay more to have someone that's more competent. All right, so in terms of actual salary ranges, so the first thing, or the first bucket, I guess I put it into, is experience or no experience. So for me, I've talked about this in another video, but I typically look for no experience, people that don't have any experience with the role that I'm hiring for. And when we're looking there, I tend to stick to the $4 to $6 an hour range. Pretty broad, but I keep it that way on purpose. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But this is most beneficial when I have documented processes and some extra time to teach them, because it's going to cost initial time investment upfront to get them up to speed with things, but over the long haul, you're not paying that higher salary over and over again, so it can pay off. Also, when I look for someone that doesn't have any experience, I can focus more on the actual character they have, because I don't think that's something that's teachable, but I think skills are taught. So when I'm looking for no experience, I'm not blinded by their past experience, and I can look at someone that has great character, great ethics, great values that align with what I'm looking for, someone I actually want to work with on a day-to-day basis. Also, then they don't have any bad habits carried over from their past job where they had experience in. So I can just basically like a blank slate that I can help them grow into what I'm looking for. Now, if we're looking with experience, you're going to pay a premium for that experience level they have. I tend to look in the $7 to $10 an hour range for that. Although you can go lower and you can go higher, that's typically just what I would use as a general expectation. Now, when you're hiring for experience, you're going to have to know how to vet, because just because they have something on their resume doesn't mean they actually know how to do it. I've come across plenty of people who claim to know how to do something. Turns out the last guy that they actually learned it from wasn't very competent, didn't know how to do that much themselves. So if you're looking for experience, you have to have maybe like mock tests in place to make sure that they actually know what they're talking about. So these numbers, as I said, might sound a little higher than what you've heard before. And there's a couple reasons for this, but one of them being I'm looking for top tier virtual assistant talent. So I cast a wider net when I pay above market. The other, and I think the main reason for this, is loyalty. When there's not many competitors paying the same rate, they don't have much reason to leave, especially since I give them a great work environment, or at least I like to think I do. So by also paying higher, I'm able to create that value proposition that makes them want to stay loyal to the company for a long time. You know, there's less of a hurdle for them to be like, oh, I'm just going to jump to this company because they pay the same. It's like they would have to take a pay cut to move to a different company. The other thing is just like a karma thing, I guess, or like a goodwill. I find that when I take care of them, they understand that I value them, and they'll pay that back to me. You know, they're not going to be like, oh, well, I'm only getting paid this much in the job, so I'm not going to give it my best effort. I prefer to go on that higher end just so that, you know, that's not even a question. I know that they're going to be giving it their all because they're getting compensated as such. Now, how do you actually go about using that range in your job posting? So the reason why I start with a broad range, like $4 to $6 an hour, is so that the candidate can self-select where they find they fit into that range best. So it's like if someone has a case for why they are worth that higher amount, then I'll entertain that. But really, it's about being able to match the expectations of the candidate. So at the end of every interview, I'll ask, what do you think is a fair salary for this role given your background? And so it's almost like they have to sell themselves to me as to why they deserve this higher rate, or, you know, most of the time people just go with the lower rate, especially if it's a lower experience job, because they know it can grow into something. Now, the other way you can use this salary range is to set an intro rate, where say for the first 30 days, you're paying like $1 an hour lower. And then once they pass that initial onboarding and you really are ready to invest in them, you can go to that higher range. So they have something to work towards. In terms of when to actually increase that pay, I tend to do annual increases, so like 5 to 10% increase every year. I've heard arguments against this in the past as to it incentivizes them to kind of stay under the radar, but my team knows I'm on top of everything they do and everything's measurable, so if someone's made it to the year mark, I know that they're legit and they deserve the pay increase rather than trying to make it like discretionary. And then some other things that are going to affect the base pay range that you use are going to be the other forms of compensation. So like 13th month pay, which is required locally in the Philippines, but not when you're contracting overseas. However, in my team, I always provide it, and I recommend it for our clients to provide it, sort of like a Christmas bonus sort of thing. But if you're offering 13th month pay, you can go lower in the salary range because they know the longer they stay with you, it's going to come up in the back end. PTO, if you have a generous PTO policy or no PTO policy, then you have to include that as to what the salary is going to be. Bonus potential. If they have a high potential for performance bonuses, you can keep the salary range base lower. This is definitely what I prefer, especially with Amazon jobs like product research, where there's a directly attributable number to the profit they create. So it's like the base salary takes care of their needs, and then they have plenty of incentive to achieve more. And that's also a great way to attract that high talent, that high quality talent that we're looking for, because they'll see that performance bonus and be like, oh, if I actually put in the work, I can achieve a lot. And then work hours. If you want someone who has to work in US hours, that's gonna be a 12-hour difference. And so they're working in the middle of the night, which is gonna command a higher salary. But if you have a flex time schedule, you know, that can mean you have a lower base pay because they have such flexibility in when they get to work. So how do you actually pay your virtual assistant? For me, my personal team, I use just like a Google Sheet. Basically, they just input their hours worked. They track that on a daily basis. And then every 2 weeks, I go in the sheet, see how much I owe them, and then I send it on Wise. The fee is like a couple dollars. I think it's like $5 per transfer. And I do it in Philippine peso, and it goes directly into their bank account. So no extra work, no fees for them. I also make sure that they receive the full salary amount after fees. Like I'm the one that covers that, not them. Some people use PayPal. I highly advise against that because they charge, when you convert to Philippine peso, they charge pretty crazy like upcharge on the exchange rate. So I just do it Wise. Then you don't have to worry about like any wire transfers or what's that one, TransUnion or anything like that. So I hope this answers your question of how much you should pay your virtual assistant from the Philippines. When I hire from the Philippines, I'm looking to build a team that will take on the responsibilities and tasks of my Amazon business. I'm not looking for just a bunch of $2 an hour data entry VAs. That's why we look in the higher salary range. As we talked about, there's many factors that go into deciding what it's going to be. The most important one to me being what the talent expects. Usually based off their past jobs or what they get paid currently, they have a pretty good idea of what they're expecting. And it's important to me to meet their expectations so that it doesn't come back to bite me later, or they, accept it under pressure and then they decide to leave later. And in your job posting, I recommend to start with a broad range, as most job postings do, but then nailing it down on the interview, getting an idea of what, after they've read the job posting and they've talked with you, getting an idea of what they're actually expecting. So if this has been valuable to you, it's all I talk about on here, on Shorts, TikTok, LinkedIn. So shoot me a follow, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.